All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Picture this. It's the summer of 1992, and we are unpacking what has to be the most miraculous, completely expectation-defying underdog victory in the history of European football. I mean, we're talking about a tournament run that literally tore up every single rulebook on how to achieve greatness on the international stage.
So, here is the central mystery we are solving today. How on earth do you win a tournament you didn't even qualify for? Because the story of Euro 92, it's a literal sporting fairy tale. Think about it. Usually, teams prepare for months, sometimes years, to peak at a major championship. But Denmark, they failed to even qualify. They were out, done, eliminated. So, how in the world did they end up lifting the trophy?
To give you an idea of how crazy this was, even Denmark's own star players thought winning was absolutely impossible. Take Brian Laudrup, for instance, one of the greatest talents of his generation. He literally laughed when his manager announced their goal was to go to Sweden and win the whole thing. The players had no belief, basically zero preparation, and seemingly no chance at all.
Which brings us to part 1, the accidental qualifiers, from vacation myth to last-minute contenders.
Let's start with the unbelievable sequence of events that actually got them there. Following the tragic outbreak of war in the Balkans, Yugoslavia, who by the way was a total powerhouse team that had legitimately won Denmark's qualifying group, was disqualified due to UN sanctions. This suddenly opened the door for the group runners-up. Yep, Denmark. With just 10 days to go before kickoff, they were officially invited to take Yugoslavia's place. 10 days.
Now it's time to bust a famous myth right here. You might have heard the story that the Danish players were literally pulled off the beach with piña coladas in hand. Not quite. They were actually gathering for a postseason friendly. But make no mistake, they were still wildly unprepared for a major tournament. Their legendary goalkeeper, Peter Schmeichel, even jokingly described the squad at the time as a, quote, bunch of fat vacation lads.
All right, moving on to part 2, death of Danish dynamite. Pragmatism over flair. If we look at the history, the real crucial shift happened when their new manager, Richard Møller Nielsen, completely abandoned the beloved attacking style of the 1980s. See, the team was known as Danish Dynamite. They played beautiful, swashbuckling football, but they never actually won any trophies. So Nielsen brought in a heavily defensive, pragmatic, results-oriented system. It wasn't pretty, no, but it was designed to make them incredibly tough to beat. And wow, was this pragmatic approach controversial? It was so unpopular that the two brightest stars in Danish football, brothers Michael and Brian Laudrup, famously quit the national team in protest of Nielsen's tactics. While Brian eventually made peace and returned just before the tournament, Michael, who was widely considered Denmark's absolute best player, refused. That meant Denmark went to the Euros without their brightest star. So their underdog status? Yeah, it just became even more extreme.
And early on, things looked incredibly grim. After a 0-0 draw with England and a 1-0 loss to the hosts, Sweden, Denmark sat dead last in their group. Think about those numbers. They had 1 point, 0 goals, and essentially had 1 foot on the plane back home. Everyone assumed the fairy tale was over before it even really got started. But then, the turning point. Going up against a French team boasting massive superstars like Cantona, Pepin, and Blanc, the Danes pulled off this miraculous 2-1 escape act to advance. And what makes this even better? The French players were apparently so confident beforehand, they allegedly asked the Danes to take it easy on tackles so they wouldn't get injured for the semifinals. Unbelievable, right? Well, that arrogance absolutely fueled Denmark's fire. Let's jump to Section 3, the Brøndby Brotherhood, the secret weapon of team chemistry. 10. I want you to let that number sink in. That is the staggering number of players in the Danish squad who came from or had previously played for a single domestic club, Brøndby. In modern international football, trying to create genuine team chemistry in 10 days is just impossible. But the thing is, Denmark didn't have to create it. They brought it right along with them. Because they had this built-in club chemistry. I mean, many of these guys had literally just reached the UEFA Cup semifinals together, and absolutely zero external pressure, they formed this fearless, united front. Nobody expected a thing from them, and that completely freed them up to play without that suffocating weight of expectation that crushes so many tournament favorites. This unbreakable brotherhood helped them shock the defending champion Dutch squad, a powerhouse team featuring legends like Ruud Gullit and Dennis Bergkamp. After an absolute thriller of a 2-2 draw, the match goes to penalties, and get this, every single Danish player slotted their penalty perfectly under immense pressure. while Peter Schmeichel pulled off a legendary save against Marco van Basten, officially sealing their spot in the final. Just incredible.
All right, Section 4, the Back Pass Masterclass, or How to Exploit the Rules.
Now, this concept might sound totally alien to modern fans, but back in the day, the rules were a bit different. You were actually legally allowed to endlessly pass the ball back to your goalkeeper's hands. So if a team really wanted to kill some time, the defense would just casually tap it back to the goalie, who would pick it up, hold it, and just wait. And Peter Schmeichel and his defenders, they ruthlessly spammed this tactic. I'm talking launching back passes from as far up as central midfield. They would just stand there, wait for the frustrated opposition to sprint all the way forward, only for Schmeichel to scoop the ball up into his gloves at the very last second. It was hypnotic, incredibly exhausting for the opponent, and honestly, a total masterclass in exploiting the rulebook. But here's the crazy part. Their time wasting was so uniquely effective, and let's be real, pretty tough to watch for football purists, that it literally forced FIFA to alter the laws of football forever. Seriously. Just months later, the back pass rule as we know it today was introduced, strictly forbidding keepers from picking up deliberate passes. Talk about leaving a massive mark on the sport.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the ultimate underdog triumph, the final against a unified Germany. The contrast here couldn't possibly be starker. You had the ultimate footballing machine facing off against a squad of exhausted, late entries missing their absolute best player. The German squad was so incredibly confident that their star midfielder Stefan Effenberg actually called Brian Laudrup the day before the match and presumptuously asked to swap shirts. The guy literally wanted his trophy before a ball was even kicked.
But against all logic, Denmark absolutely dominated the narrative step by step. Midfielder John Jensen, who had been shooting terribly all tournament, unleashes this absolute rocket in the 18th minute to take the lead. Then Schmeichel basically builds a brick wall, denying Jürgen Klinsmann with these world-class saves. And finally, in the 78th minute, Kim Vilfort squeezes a shot off the post and in to seal a historic 2-0 victory.
And Vilfort's clinching goal? It becomes even more powerful when you realize the heartbreaking personal tragedy he was enduring. Throughout the entire tournament, he was traveling back and forth to Denmark to be by the bedside of his terminally ill daughter, Leen. It was actually Lion herself who pleaded with her father to return for the final. Knowing that context adds such a deeply human, profoundly moving layer to that defining strike. Following the victory, a brilliant quote perfectly captured the immense national pride of a tiny country conquering the continent. See, just a few weeks prior, Denmark had famously voted in a referendum against joining the European Union. So as their foreign secretary brilliantly quipped, if you can't join them, beat them. They certainly beat them on the pitch.
So I'll leave you with this thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Was Denmark's Euro '92 victory a pure miracle? Or was it a masterclass in utilizing a nothing-to-lose mentality combined with unbreakable team chemistry? If you take away the lessons of structure, unity, and tactical pragmatism we've explored today, ask yourself, what impossible things could you achieve if you approached your biggest challenges with absolutely nothing to lose?